Over New York turned dark at noon, not from clouds or storms, but from ships. Hundreds of massive alien warships blocked out the sun, their hulls striking for miles above every major city on Earth. People stopped in the streets staring up at the impalpable sight. Cars crashed, alarms blared, the world held its breath. Grant stood in the command center beneath Colorado, watching the screens fill with red dots. Each dot represented an enemy ship. He counted 847 vessels in total. His jaw tightened as he looked at the tactical display. Earth's entire defense fleet numbered only 43 ships, and they looked like toys compared to the alien dread. "We're receiving a transmission," Captain M. Price said from her station. Her fingers moved across the holographic controls, her face pale but steady. "It's broadcasting to every device on the planet, every phone, every computer, every screen." "Put it through," said. That appeared made several officers step back. The alien commander stood 12 feet tall, covered in dark scales that gleamed like polished stone. 4 arms crossed over a massive chest. Eyes like burning coals stared out from a face that looked like it was carved from nightmare. Behind him, dozens of similar creatures stood at attention. "The Conqueror, Supreme Commander of the Empire." His voice rumbled like thunder, translated somehow into every language simultaneously. "We have claimed 400 worlds across the galaxy. Your primitive planet is now ours. You have 72 hours to surrender completely. Dismantle your governments, disarm your militaries, submit to rule, or we will burn your world to ash and take it in." Transmission ended. Silence filled the command center for 3 long seconds. "Me, the President," said quietly, "and contact every military installation on the planet. We need to know what we're dealing with." The reaction was the same. Fear, panic, chaos. In Seoul, Private Danny stood at his post on the city's defense perimeter, watching civilians flood the streets in terror. He gripped his rifle, knowing the weapon wouldn't do much against ships that size. He was only 22 years old, fresh out of training. This was supposed to be real. "Order, sir?" he asked his commanding officer. Sir stared at the sky, then at Danny. "Hold position, wait for command," but his voice shook. United Nations building in Geneva, ambassador gathered with representatives from every nation. The room erupted in arguments. Some wanted to fight. Others insisted surrender was the only option. A few suggested trying to negotiate. "Must tempt diplomacy," said, raising her voice above the chaos. "Perhaps we can buy time, learn more about them, find a weakness." "Said 72 hours," the Chinese ambassador replied. "What can we learn in 3 days that will matter against 847 wars?" Didn't have an answer, but she knew they had to try. 6 hours after the old ma'am led a small diplomatic shuttle into orbit, had argued against it, saying it was too dangerous. But the world leaders agreed that someone had to make contact, had to try to find a peaceful solution. Volunteered. The ship dwarfed her shuttle like a whale next to a minnow. As they approached the dying bay, felt her heart hammering in her chest. She had negotiated peace deals in war zones, faced down terrorists and dictators. But this was different. These were conquerors from the stars who had crushed 400 civilizations. The bay could have fit a city block inside it. Warriors lined the walls, each one holding weapons that hummed with deadly energy. And her security team of 4 were escorted through quarters that seemed designed to make humans feel small and helpless. In a chamber the size of a football field, he sat on a throne made from the hull of a destroyed ship, surrounded by his commanders. When entered, he didn't stand. He barely looked at her. "Commander," began, keeping her voice steady, "I come representing the nations of Earth. We wish to discuss terms. Perhaps there is a way our worlds can coexist peacefully." The sound made the floor vibrate. "Coexist? Little human, you do not understand. They do not negotiate with primitives. We conquer, we claim, we rule. Your species will serve or it will die. There are no other options. Have survived wars, plagues, disasters," said. "Humanity is stronger than you think. We ask for respect, for a chance to prove we can be allies rather than slaves." Forward, his burning eyes fixed on. "You speak of strength, let me show you strength." He gestured to his guards. "Kill or crew." Could react, energy weapons fired. Her 4 security officers died instantly, their bodies hitting the floor, screamed, stumbling backward. The warriors grabbed her arms, holding her in place. "We'll return to your plant," said coldly. "You will tell them what happened to those who speak of alliances with the... You have 66 hours remaining." We're back into her shuttle and sent her away. Sat in the pilot seat, hands shaking, tears streaming down her face. She looked back at the alien flagship and felt something crack inside her chest. Not her spirit, her hope. Shuttle landed back on Earth. Grant met her personally. She stumbled out, covered in the blood of her crew, and collapsed into his arms. "Won't negotiate," she whispered. "They barely see us as alive. I've never met anyone like them. They don't want our resources or our labor. They want our submission, our humiliation, and they'll kill us all to get it." Turned to the medical bay, then returned to the command center. The world's militaries had been running simulations for the past 8 hours. Every scenario ended the same way, total defeat. "We attempted to strike against one of their small ships," Empire reported. "We hit it with everything we had. Nuclear missiles, plasma cannons, railguns. Their shields didn't even flicker." At the screen showing Earth's pathetic defenses. Then he looked at a different screen, one that showed a file marked with the highest security clearance in human history, Protocol Crimson. He had hoped to never see it activated, but they were out of options. "I need you to verify something for me," he said quietly. "In all your tactical analysis, did you find any weaks in the strat?" Pulled up her reports. "Only one thing stands out, sir. They rely completely on fear and overwhelming force. Every world they've conquered surrendered quickly because resistance seemed hopeless. They've never faced an enemy that fought back after the initial show of power. They've never faced anyone crazy enough to keep fighting when victory was impossible." Slowly, a terrible plan began forming in his mind. "Get me the President, and start running authorization codes for the Rocky Mountain Vault." Her M looked confused. "That facility has been sealed for 30 years. What's in there?" "Thing we swore we'd never use," said. "Something that might be our only chance." 8 hours after they arrived, broadcast another message. This time, he showed footage of his forces landing in cities around the world. They marched through the streets, demonstrating their power. Any human who raised a weapon was vaporized instantly. Any crowd that didn't disperse was scattered with sonic weapons that shattered bones. Old Danny watched from his position as soldiers executed a group of protesters in the city center. His hands shook with rage and helplessness. His commanding officer had ordered them not to engage. They were outmatched, and Earth Command was playing something that required them to wait. Rocky Mountain facility, Grant stood before a massive vault door. The President had given authorization. Every security protocol had been cleared. M. Price stood beside him, along with a team of scientists and military personnel. "Well, are you certain about this?" one of the scientists asked. "Protocol Crimson was created as a last resort. These people volunteered, yes, but they gave up everything." "Give us no choice," relied. He entered the final authorization code. The vault door, 3 feet of reinforced steel and concrete, began to open. Cold air rushed out, carrying with it the weight of decades of sickness. Row after row of pods lined the massive chamber. Thousands of them, each one marked with a crimson symbol, each one containing a human who had volunteered to sleep until humanity faced its darkest hour. "Get them up," commanded. "Wake up the Crimson Legion." Soldier to wake up was Colonel Jake. His eyes opened slowly, his mind struggling through decades of frozen sleep. The last thing he remembered was saying goodbye to his wife and daughter before the terrorist attack. The attack he couldn't stop. The attack that killed them while he was overseas on deployment. He had volunteered for Protocol Crimson the next day, ready to give up his life if it meant saving other families from the pain. Back, Colonel, a woman's voice said. Jake turned his head and saw M. Price standing beside his pod. I'm Captain M. Price, Earth Defense Force. I'm sorry to wake you, but Earth needs the Legion. Sat up, his body responding faster than it should have. The enhancements. He remembered now. They had done things to his body to all their bodies before putting them into sleep, made them stronger, faster, more durable, turned them into weapons. How long, he asked. 2 years since you went under, M replied. The world has changed a lot, but some things stay the same. We're facing extinction, and we need soldiers who know how to fight when there's no hope of winning. Looked around the massive vault as more pods opened. Men and women emerged, all with the same confusion in their eyes. All volunteers, all people who had lost something they could never get back, all ready to die for a better world. Many enemy ships? Jake asked, sliding out of the pod. His legs held steady. His enhanced muscles remembered how to move. 147, M said. They're called the Empire. They've conquered 400 worlds. They've given us 24 hours to surrender or die. Not slowly. Those were good odds, better than he expected. He had thought Earth might face something worse. Who's in command? Earl Grant. He's waiting for you in the briefing room. The next hour, all 5,000 members of the Crimson Legion woke up. They gathered in the massive brief chamber, and Jake stood before them. He recognized some faces. Sergeant Maya Santos, who survived the resource wars that claimed her entire unit. Lieutenant Ben, barely 19 when he volunteered after losing his family to a pendeck. Captain Railstone, who walked away from a prominent career after failing to save her team in. We're all broken in some way, all haunted, all dangerous. Up, Jake called out, his voice carrying across the chamber. I'm going to be straight with you. We've been asleep for decades. The world moved on. Everyone we knew is either old or dead, but Earth is still here and it's in trouble. Alien conquerors have arrived with nearly 1,000 warships. They've demanded we surrender. They've killed our diplomats. They've shown no mercy. I was looking at the face of his soldiers. Earth's conventional military can't test them. Their shields are too strong. Their weapons are too powerful, so they woke us up. 5,000 enhanced soldiers against an empire that's conquered 400 worlds. Anyone want to go back to sleep? But he moved. Several soldiers smiled. These were people who had volunteered to die fighting. This was exactly what they wanted. Jake continued. Because we're going to do something insane. We're going to board their ships, kill their commanders, and break their fleet from the inside. And most of us aren't coming back, but Earth will survive. That's all that matters. Earl Grant stepped forward, activating the holographic display. It showed the fleet in orbit, each ship marked with tactical data. Lie on hierarchical command, M. Price explained, taking over the briefing. Every ship reports to command vessel. Every command vessel reports to the flagship. If we can eliminate their leadership, especially their supreme commander, the fleet will fall in chaos. They've never needed backup plans because they've never faced real resistance. Do we reach them? My Santo asked. Those ships are in orbit. And certain pods replied. We've been working on them for years. They're not perfect, but they can get you close enough to breach the hulls. Once inside, you'll be on your own. Our scans show they are large, physically powerful, and heavily armed. But you have advantages. You're enhanced. You're trained in close combat, and you're willing to die to complete the mission. Studied the tactical display. His mind was already working through the logistics. We need to hit multiple ships at once. If we focus on just the flagship, they'll reinforce it. We need to create chaos across the fleet. Jake said, we'll split into teams. Primary objective is the flagship, and secondary teams will hit the command ships. Tertiary teams will focus on disrupting their communications and sensor networks. We make them blind, scared, and leaderless all at once. Helen Carter, the scientist who designed the enhancement program, entered the briefing room. She looked older now, gray hair where there had been brown. She had been young when she created the Legion. Now she was looking at her life's work about to go into battle. She said quietly, the enhancements will hold. Your bodies can take punishment that would kill normal humans, but you're not invincible. You can still die. And the neural conditioning will help with fear response, but it won't make you feel less pain. No, Doc, Jake replied. We knew what we were signing up for. Nodded, tears in her eyes. Then good luck, and I'm sorry it came to this. Trained for the next 36 hours. Their enhanced bodies needed little sleep, and they used every minute to prepare. They practiced breathing tactics, close quarters combat, and emergency procedures. The veterans taught the younger soldiers. The younger soldiers brought new ideas the veterans hadn't considered. Santos found herself working closely with M. Price during the planning sessions. They developed the infiltration routes together, going over every detail. Remind me of someone I knew, Maya said during a break. My old she never gave up no matter how bad things got. What happened to her? Emma asked. Died covering our retreat, Maya replied. Took out an enemy position with her last grenade so the rest of us could escape. I've carried that guilt for 30 years of frozen sleep. This mission feels right, like I'm finally paying back what she gave me. Looked at the soldier, seeing the pain behind her eyes. You know you might not come back. It's fine, Maya said with a small smile. I stopped expecting to survive a long time ago. Now I just want my death to mean something. Surface, the activation was getting worse. They had started what they called compliance inspections in Major City. In Seoul, Danny watched in horror as soldiers marched through the streets, dragging people from their homes. Anyone who resisted was killed on the spot. Anyone who ran was hunted down. A man near Dan's position shouted at the aliens in Korean, incurring them for invading his city. A warrior raised his weapon. Dan's finger tightened on his rifle trigger, but his orders were clear. Do not engage. Not yet. The blast hit the old man in the chest. He fell dead in the street. Dan closed his eyes and swallowed his rage, but he remembered the man's face. He would remember all of them. At night, with 12 hours remaining on the ultimatum, the Crimson Legion gathered in the launch bay. 5,000 soldiers in Crimson Mark combat armor stood ready. Jake walked among them, checking equipment, offering quiet words of encouragement. You think we can actually do this? Ben asked Jake quietly. We don't have a choice, Jake replied. But yes, I think we can, not because we're stronger or smarter than them, but because they've never fought anyone who had nothing to lose. They use fear as a weapon. What happens when your enemy isn't afraid to die? Nod, then we win or we die trying. Both are acceptable. Pods were loaded. Each pod held 10 soldiers and enough fuel for a one-way trip to the fleet. The pods were small, cramped, and uncomfortable, but they had one purpose: get the Legion close enough to breach the alien hulls. Grant addressed them one final time over the comm system. Crimson Legion, you volunteered for this program knowing you might never wake up, or that when you did, the world you knew would be gone. You woke up to a nightmare, and instead of running, you're charging straight into it. Earth will remember what you do today. Every human who survives this will know that when extinction came for us, 5,000 soldiers said no. Stood at the door of his pod, looking back at the other soldiers. Some were praying. Others were checking their weapons one last time. A few were writing final messages to people who were probably already dead. And Jake called out, we've all lost something we can never get back, but today we saved something we could never replace. Earth doesn't need perks, soldiers. It needs people willing to stand up when everyone else falls down. That's us. That's who we are. Climbed into his pod. My Santos, Ben, and 7 other soldiers joined him. The door sealed shut. Through the small window, Jake could see the other pods preparing to launch. Teams ready? He asked over the comm. 2 ready, Maya replied from a different pod. 3 ready, Ben confirmed. 1, all 500 teams reported ready. Jake took a deep breath. Somewhere up there, sat on his throne, confident in his victory. They had crushed 400 worlds. What was one more? Control pods, Jake ordered. Pods shot out of Earth's atmosphere like bullets. They were invisible to most sensors, designed to look like space debris. The fleet detected nothing unusual as 500 small objects drifted toward their ship. Jake opened a communication channel that broadcast to every vessel. He wanted them to hear this, wanted them to know what was coming. Heard, Jake said, his voice carrying cross space. You demanded we bow. You should have studied human history first. We don't bow to tyrants. We don't surrender to bullies. And we sure as hell don't go quietly. You're about to learn why humanity is still here after a million years of fighting to survive. We're the species that doesn't know when to quit, and that's your big mistake. It's closed in on the ships. Breach charges armed. Weapons ready. 5,000 the breach charges exploded against the hull plates, tearing open holes just large enough for the insertion pods to crash through. Jake felt the impact shake his entire body as his pod smashed into the alien warship. The door blew open, and he rolled out into a corridor filled with smoke and flashing red light. Warriors turned toward the breach, raising their weapons. They were huge, towering over the humans at 3 feet, their scaled bodies protected by heavy armor. But Jake moved faster than they expected. His enhanced legs launched him forward, closing the distance before they could fire. His combat knife, made of reinforced tungsten, drove up under the nearest warrior's jaw. The alien's burning eyes went dark. Team poured out behind him, 10 soldiers against a ship with a crew of thousands. But they weren't there to hold territory. They were there to cause chaos. Get to their systems, Jake ordered. Everyone else defend the positions. We hold here until he's done. And Ben pulled out his hacking equipment and connected it to the ship's wall panel. His fingers moved fast, the neural enhancements helping him process the alien code patterns. They used a surprisingly simple system. They never expected anyone to get aboard their ships. The corridor, more soldiers charged toward them. Jake and his team opened fire with arm-piercing rounds. The bullets tore through the alien's protection. 2 warriors fell. 3 more took their place. Take the left side, Maya Santos called out from another breach point across the ship. Her voice came through Jake's comm unit. These things are tough, but they're slow. Use that against them. Ducked under a massive fist and drove his knife into the warrior's knee joint. The alien roared in pain and dropped. Jake finished it with a shot to the head. Around him, his team moved like sharks in water, using their speed and size to avoid the superior strength. In their system, Ben reported. Jake, you need to see this. Their entire fleet runs on one network. Every ship is connected. If I can upload our voice from here, it'll spread to all of them. But Jake ordered, reloading his weapon. How long? Minutes for the upload, but I found something else. Their command structure is even worse than we thought. Each ship can't operate independently. They need constant orders from above. If we cut off the flagship, most of these crews won't know what to do. Smiled grimly, then we make sure the flagship goes dark. The fleet's similar battles are up. The Crimin Legion hit 12 command ships simultaneously. In the narrow quarters of the alien vels, the human soldiers turned the size into a weakness. The enhanced humans could move through tight spaces, climb through ventilation systems, and use their environment in ways the massive aliens couldn't match. Maya Santos led her team through the ventilation shafts of one command ship. The pads were tight, barely wide enough for a human to crawl through. But that meant no could follow them. They moved like rats through the walls, planting explosives at critical junctions. At the power conduits, Maya instructed her team. We don't need to destroy the ship, we just need to make them panic. Landed their charges and crawled toward the ship bridge. Through a vent grate, Maya could see the command crew working at their stations. A war chief stood in the center, bellowing orders in their harsh language. Armed the detonator, the explosives went off throughout the ship, plunging seconds into darkness. The bridge crew panicked immediately. They weren't used to things going wrong. Maya whispered. Her team kicked out the vent grates and dropped into the bridge. They had the element of surprise for exactly 5 seconds. Maya made those seconds count. When fired in controlled bursts, taking down the crew before they could react. The war chief swung his massive arm at her, and she rolled under it, coming up with her knife. She drove it into the alien's throat. Hot blood sprayed across her arm. Secured, she reported over the comm. Ben, can you access their communications from here? You pat me through, Ben replied from his position on Jake's ship. Connected Ben's hacking device to the bridge systems. Within seconds, Ben was inside their network. I'm feeding them false tactical data. 3 command ships just received orders to fire on each other. As the fleet chaos spread, 3 command ships opened fire on their allies, believing they were targeting human vels. The confusion rippled through their formations. Ships broke ranks. Commanders demanded explanations. Nobody knew what was happening. The flagship watched his tactical display with growing fury. Red alerts appeared across multiple ships. Communication channels flooded with panic reports. Humans were inside his fleet. Humans, the primitives who should have surrendered days ago. Did they breach our hulls? He roared at his officers. Where did they come from? Known Supreme Commander, one officer replied, his voice shaking. They appeared suddenly like ghosts. Our sensors never detected them approaching. Just humans, slammed his fist on his command throne. Send boarding teams to every compromised ship. Kill them all. Show no mercy. The reports kept coming in. The human soldiers were too fast, too skilled, too willing to die. They fought like demons, taking wounds that should have killed them and continuing to fight. They set traps to ambush patrols and disappeared into the ship systems like smoke. Earth Captain M. Price monitored the battle from the command center. She watched the fleet displays as the formation fractured. The Legion was doing the impossible. They were actually hurting the enemy. Earl Grant, she called out. The Legion has created openings in their formation. Our conventional forces could exploit these gaps. And studied the tactical display. Launch all available fighters, target the damaged command ships. The Legion is giving us a chance. Let's not waste. Military outmatch and launch a coordinated strike. Fighter craft poured from bases around the world, hitting the ships that the Legion had weakened. The alien shields were still too strong for most weapons, but the psychological impact was huge. They had expected humans to cower. Instead, they were fighting back on every level. So old Private Danny watched the sky light up with weapons fire. The occupation forces received urgent orders to return to their ships. Something was wrong in orbit. The aliens who had seemed so confident hours ago now moved with uncertainty. Its commanding officer finally gave the order they'd been waiting for. All units engage the enemy, drive them back. This erupted across the city. Human soldiers who had been forced to watch atrocities suddenly struck back. They hit the retreating forces with everything they had. Most of their weapons barely scratched the alien armor, but it didn't matter. They were fighting back. That was enough. The unit ambushed a patrol near the Han River. The aliens fought hard, killing 3 human soldiers immediately, but Danny and his squad mates used their knowledge of the city streets to their advantage. They led the aliens into a prepared kill zone and brought them down with concentrated fire. Earth, Dan whispered, standing over the dead aliens. For everyone you killed. In space, Jake's team pushed deeper into their target ship. They had lost 2 soldiers to the fierce fighting, but were learning to counter their tactics, sending smaller, faster warriors after them. I've got a problem, Ben said from his position at the hacking station. I can spread the virus through their network, but it's not enough. The flagship has independent systems, can still command the fleet even if we shut down everything else. Someone needs to get to him directly. Checked his tactical map. The flagship was 3 ships away. Between here and there was an army of alien warriors who now knew humans were aboard. It would be a one-way trip. You pilot this ship? Jake asked Ben. What? No, maybe why? Smiled. Because we're going to crash it into the flagship, ram them hard enough, and we can create a breach big enough to board. It's insane, Ben said, but he was already pulling up the ship's navigation controls. I'll need 10 minutes to override their piloting systems. We've got 5, Jake replied. Everyone fall back to Ben's position, we're leaving. Team fought their way back through the quarters, carrying their wounded. My Santos heard the plan over the comm and understood immediately what it meant. If you're ramming the flagship, you'll need support teams already inside, she said. I'm bringing my unit. We'll hit them from a different angle. I know, you'll never make it. Will you? Ma replied calmly. We're already dead, remember? We died years ago back in our own time. This is just us choosing how the story ends. See you on the flagship, Colonel. Jake could respond. Ma cut the communication. She gathered her team and explained the plan. Nobody argued. They had volunteered for the mission knowing they might not return. If Jake was going after, the Crimson Legion would stand with him. Worked frantically at the controls, overriding the ship systems. Sweat poured down his face despite the cold air. His enhanced mind processed code faster than any normal human could, but it still was fast enough. Boarding teams were getting closer. Tech recorder, one of Jake's soldiers called out. Multiple hostiles. Hold them off, Jake ordered. Ben, how long? On seconds, maybe. It was crashed into the human defensive line. The close quarters battle was brutal. Jake fired until his weapon ran dry, then grabbed a fallen synergy rifle and kept shooting. His team fought with desperate courage, holding the quarter against overwhelming numbers. Their soldier fell, then another. They were running out of time. Ben, Jake shouted. Ben slammed his hand on the control panel. The ship's engines roared to life-changing course. Through the window, they could see the massive flagship growing larger. Everyone hold on, this is going to hurt. The near ship accelerated towards flagship. Crews on both vessels scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The ship crashed into the flagship side with the force of a meteor strike. The impact tore through shields and armor, creating a massive breach. The team was thrown around like toys. The ship's structure collapsed around them. Through the smoke and debris, Jake could see the flagship's interior. They were in. Oof, he shouted. Everyone who can still walk, we push forward, is somewhere in this ship. Let's go find him. Different breach points around the flagship, other Crimson Legion teams poured in. Maya Santos and her unit, other survivors from the command ship attacks. They converged toward the flagship's command center, leaving a trail of dead behind them. The warriors fought harder now, defending their supreme commander with fanatic devotion. But the Legion had come too far to stop. They pushed forward through pain, through loss, through hell itself. Stepped over the bodies of friends and enemies alike, his weapon running hot from continuous fire. Somewhere ahead waited. The tyrant who thought humans would bow, the conqueror who never expected them to fight back. It's there, Jake said over the comm. All teams converge on the command center. This ends today. His command chamber loomed ahead, guarded by the Supreme Commander's elite warriors. Jake counted 20 of them. Behind him, only 5 Legion soldiers remained standing from his original team. But through the smoke, he saw Maya Santos and her team approaching from another quarter, and more teams beyond that. Guards at its command chamber were the finest warriors the Empire had produced. Each one stood 8 feet tall, covered in battle scars and enhanced armor. They had fought in hundreds of campaigns across 400 worlds. They had never known defeat. Again, the 30 remaining Legion soldiers hit them like a storm. Its wave of combat lasted 15 seconds. That was all it took for the elite guards to kill 10 Legion soldiers. But those 10 seconds cost the half their number. The humans fought with a fury born from desperation and loss. They used every dirt trick, every brutal technique, every advantage their enhanced body provided. Santos threw herself at one guard, wrapping around his mav arm and driving her knife into the gap between his helmet and chest plate. The guard tried to shake her off, but she held on even as he slammed her against the wall. Her bones cracked, her vision blurred, but she kept twisting the knife until the guard finally fell. Shot another guard in the face at point-blank range, his weapon so hot it burned his hands. He didn't let go, he couldn't afford to. A guard fell and the Legion stood before the command chamber doors. Of the 30 who charged, only 12 remained standing. Jake's left arm was broken. Mike could barely breathe through her crushed ribs. Ben was missing an eye, blood streaming down his face. But they were still alive, still fighting. Put it, Jake ordered. Placed his remaining hand on the door controls. The enhanced security meant nothing to him now. He had learned every system in the network. The doors slid open. And chamber was enormous. A throne made from the wreckage of conquered ships sat at the far end. And on that throne sat the conqueror waiting for them. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't even concerned. He looked at the bloodied, broken humans and smiled. The insects finally reached me, said his voice echoing through the chamber. I killed your diplomats, I burned your cities, and still you fight. Your species is too stupid to know when it be. Not beaten until we're dead, Jake replied, raising his weapon. And even then we'll take you with us. From his throne, he was 12 feet of muscle and scale, 4 arms ending in claws that could tear through steel, enhanced by technology from dozens of conquered worlds. A warrior who had personally killed the leaders of 400 civilizations. And then said, let me show you why they rule the galaxy. An open fire, every weapon they had left unleashed at once. The bullets and enemy blasts hit his personal shield, a shimmering barrier that surrounded him like a second skin. The shield absorbed everything, not even flickering. Laugh in charge. First attack killed 3 soldiers instantly. One massive fist crushed a human chest. Another claw tore through 2 more. He moved faster than something that size should be able to move. The soldiers scattered, trying to find angles to attack. Rolled under swing and fired at the alien's legs. The shield held. Mai came from the other side, her knife seeking weak points. The shield held. Ben tried to hack the shield generator with his equipment. Nothing worked. Technology is primitive, mocked, killing another solar. Your bodies are weak, your weapons are toys. What made you think you could defeat me? So 2 more of his team fall. They were running out of time, out of options, out of soldiers. He looked at Ben, still trying desperately to break through the shield. Then Jake had an idea, terrible idea, but it was all they had left. Jake shouted over the sound of fighting. Stop trying to shut down the shield, overload it instead. Make it burn so much power it has to shut down to prevent damage. His remaining eye widened. That would take an enormous power surge. We'd need to hit it with more energy than all our weapons combined. About the ship's reactor, Mai asked, understanding immediately. If we overload it, the explosion would trigger the shield's sake protocols. Would also kill everyone in this section of the ship, Ben replied, including us. We're already dead, Jake said. We've been dead for years, let's make it count. Again, crushing another soldier under his foot. Even in your final moments, you're pathetic. You think I haven't heard such speeches before? Every world says the same things. Every leader claims they'll never surrender. And then they'll bow or they die. It makes no difference to me. Difference, Jake said, limping forward despite his broken body, is that we mean it. His fingers flew over his hacking device. He connected to the flagship's reactor controls. They had good security, but they never expected anyone to try to cause a meltdown. Ben overrode every safety system, every emergency protocol. Seconds, Ben said calmly. The reactor will go critical and explode. The blast should be contained to this section, but shield will have to shut down to avoid the power surge. That'll give you 5 seconds, maybe less. We make those 5 seconds count, Maya said. She looked at Jake. It's been an honor, Colonel. Honor was mine, Sergeant, Jake replied. As something was wrong, his officers were screaming warnings over the comm system. His ship systems were going haywire. He turned toward Ben. What have you done? And your empire never learned? Ben said, smiling through the blood on his face. Sometimes winning isn't about being stronger. It's about being willing to pay the price. After hit critical mass, warning klaxons blared throughout the ship. Shield generator detected the massive power surge building and automatically shut down to protect itself from damage. For 5 seconds, the Supreme Commander was vulnerable. Alien soldiers moved as one. They had trained together, fought together, lost everything together, and now they would die together. Knife found his throat. Mai's blade drove into his chest. Ben, with his last strength, fired his weapon point blank into the alien's face. The other surviving soldiers attacked from every angle, giving everything they had. In pain and fury, he killed 2 more humans with his dying strength, but he was mortal after all, and mortality has limits. The Supreme Commander of the Empire fell to his knees, then crashed forward onto the deck. We win, Mai asked, collapsing beside Jake. Killed their leader, Jake replied, cawing blood. That's enough. Dragged himself to console, knowing he had seconds left. With his remaining strength, he uploaded the virus into the flagship's command network, the virus he had been building throughout their attack, the virus that would do more damage than any weapon. Look complete, Ben whispered, broadcasting now. It spread through the fleet's network like wildfire, but it didn't destroy their systems. It did something far more devastating. It accessed every sensor recording, every communication log, every piece of data showing the atrocities they had committed across 400 worlds, and it broadcast everything to every planet that controlled. It's the galaxy on 400 conquered worlds. The oppressed population saw the truth. They saw they could be defeated. They saw humans fighting with nothing but courage and determination. They saw the Supreme Commander fall to soldiers who refused to surrender. The effect was immediate. Rebellions erupted on dozens of worlds. The subject populations, held down by fear for so long, suddenly rose up. The empire, which had seemed eternal, began to crack. Did it, Ben said, his voice barely a whisper. We freed them all. After it exploded, the blast tore through the command section of the flagship, killing everyone inside. Jake's last thought was of his wife and daughter waiting for him in whatever comes after. He hoped they would be proud. Earth Enterprise watched the tactical display as the flagship went dark. Her hands shook as she realized what happened. The Legion had done it. They had killed, but they had paid the ultimate price. Well, one of her officers called out. The fleet is breaking apart. Ships are receiving distress calls from across their empire. They're retreating. Grant watched the enemy warships turn away from Earth. Without their Supreme Commander, without their command structure, they had no idea what to do. Some ships tried to maintain formation. Others immediately jumped to hyperspace, rushing back to their conquered worlds to deal with rebellions. The unified fleet fractured in chaos. Shaw fighters ordered, don't let them regroup, drive them out of our system. Military battered and bloodied but still fighting pursued the retreating aliens. They fought back, killing hundreds more humans, but their heart was gone. Their certainty of victory had shattered. They had come to Earth expecting easy prey. Instead, they found an enemy that refused to die quietly. Sol, Danny, and his unit watched the alien ships lift off from the city. The occupation forces abandoned their positions, rushing back to orbit in panic. The humans they had terrorized for days now hunted them through the street. Found the body of the old man who had been killed days ago, still lying in the street where he fell. He picked up the man's body and carried him to his family. They wept and thanked him. Danny didn't feel like a hero. He felt like someone who had survived when better people had died. But his commanding officer said over the radio, stand down, the aliens are retreating, the war is over. He looked up at the sky, watching the ships flee. What about the soldiers who boarded their ships, the ones who made the possible? Once on the radio, then quietly, they're gone, all of them. They knew it was a one-way trip. Closed his eyes. 5,000 soldiers whose names he would never know. 5,000 people who had given everything so Earth could survive. He would remember them. They all would. The next hours, the fleet completely from Earth's space. A few damaged ships were left behind, their crews surrendering rather than dying. Earth's forces captured them, treating the prisoners better than they had treated human captives. It wasn't mercy. It was proof that humanity was doomed. Last ship jumped to hyperspace, and Earth was free. The command center, Enterprise, allowed herself to finally break down. She had sent those soldiers to die. She had helped plan the mission that killed 5,000 people. The fact that it worked didn't make the weight any lighter. Earl Grant put a hand on her shoulder. They volunteered, he said quietly. Every single one of them chose this, and they saved billions of lives. No, Em replied, tears streaming down her face, but that doesn't make it hurt less. Helen Carter stood alone in the vault, looking at the imp pods. She had created the enhancement program 30 years ago, believing it would give humanity a chance if the worst ever happened. Now the worst had happened, and all her soldiers were gone. Sat down among the imp pods and wept for her children, the children who had trusted her science, who had believed in her vision, who had died to prove they were right. Days after the retreat, search and rescue teams reached the destroyed flagship. They found the wreckage of the command section blown apart by the reactor explosion. They found bodies, hundreds of dozens of humans. In the ruins of the throne room, they found Colonel Jake. Against every law of physics and biology, his enhanced body had kept him alive. Barely. His heart beat once every 30 seconds. His lungs took one breath every minute, but he lived. Rescue teams rushed him back to Earth. Doctors who had never seen anything like his injuries worked frantically to save him. For 3 days, Jake hovered between life and death. The 4th day, he opened his eyes. Price was there sitting beside his hospital bed. Welcome back, Colonel, she said, her voice breaking. You did it. You saved us all. Tried to speak, but his throat was too damaged. He looked around the room, searching. Where were his soldiers? Where was Maya? Where was Ben? Understood his question without words. You're the only one, Jake, the only survivor from the command team. Maya Santos died in the explosion. Ben died uploading the virus. All the others. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Closed his eyes. He had survived again. Everyone around him had died, and he had survived. Again, just like with his family, just like his unit. He was cursed to always be the one left behind. World wants to celebrate you, Em said. You're a hero, the man who killed the soldier who saved Earth. Shook his head slightly. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man who had been lucky enough or cursed enough to keep breathing when better people stopped. The real heroes were the ones who didn't come back. The 4,999 names that would be carved on memorials. The soldiers who had been willing to sacrifice everything. Now, Em said, you've earned it. 3 months after the retreat from Earth, the planet still bore the scars of occupation. Entire city blocks lay in ruins. Mass graves held thousands of civilians killed during the brief but brutal invasion. But humanity was rebuilding. They always did. But above Earth, construction crews put the finishing touches on a new station. It wasn't a military installation. It was a memorial. The Crimson Memorial Station, bearing 5,000 names carved into its outer hull. Each name represented a soldier who had given everything for a world they barely knew. Lem Price, promoted after Grant's retirement, stood on the observation deck of the memorial station. She watched Earth turn slowly below, blue and green and beautiful, worth fighting for, worth dying for. Earl, the ceremony is about to begin, an aide said quietly. Auden made her way to the main chamber. Representatives from every nation on Earth had gathered. Diplomats from a dozen alien species who had reached out after humanity's victory stood in attendance. And at the front of the chamber, in a wheelchair because his legs still hadn't fully healed, sat Colonel. Older than his years, the physical injuries were healing slowly, but the emotional wounds were deeper. Em saw it in his eyes every time they spoke. The guilt of survival, the weight of 4,999 deaths he carried on his shoulders. Of Earth, Em began, her voice echoing through the chamber. And honored guests from across the galaxy, we gather today to remember the Crimson Legion, 5,000 soldiers who volunteered for an impossible mission, 5,000 heroes who proved that humanity will never bow to. Names from the list. My Santos, Ben Wraithstone. Each name brought tears to someone's eyes. Family members who had thought their loved one died decades ago only to learn they had been sleeping waiting for that moment. Parents who had lost children. Children who had lost parents. Wives, husbands, brothers, sisters. Each name represented a hole in someone's heart. Finished reading, the chamber fell silent. Then Jake wheeled himself to the front. He had refused to prepare a speech, refused to rehearse. What he needed to say came from somewhere deeper than words. Not a hero, Jake said, his voice rough but clear. The heroes are the names you just heard, the people who didn't come back. I'm just the one who survived again. I survived when my family died, I survived when my unit died, and I survived when the Legion died, so I'm going to spend whatever time I have left making sure none of you forget them. Looked at the names carved into the walls around them. These soldiers came from different times, different wars, different lives, but they all had one thing in common. They refused to let fear win, the thought they could terrify us in submission. Instead, they woke up an army of people who already knew the worst pain life could offer, and those people chose to fight it. Paused, collecting his thoughts. My Santos told me something before the mission. She said we were already dead, that we had died years ago in our own time. This was just us choosing how our story ended. She was right. The Legion didn't die fighting, though. We died long before that. It just gave us a chance to make our deaths mean something. Looked at the families in the audience. Your loved ones saved billions of lives, not just on Earth, but across 400 worlds. The virus Ben uploaded didn't just damage the fleet. It showed every conquered world that the Empire could be beat. Rebellions are still spreading across the galaxy. They are finished as a power, and it's because 5,000 broken soldiers decided to stand up one last time. Was wept openly now, Jake continued, his voice getting stronger. So when you remember the Crimson Legion, don't remember us as perfect heroes. Remember us as people, flawed people who made mistakes, people who carried pain and regret, people who were scared but fought anyway, because that's what real courage looks like. It's not about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing what's right. Speaking and wheeled back to his place. The ceremony continued with speeches from world leaders, with military honors, with moments of silence. But Jake didn't hear most of it. He was lost in his memories, seeing the faces of his fallen comrades. With the ceremony, Em found Jake alone on the observation deck. He stared out at Earth, his expression distant. Government wants to offer you a position, Em said, training the new defense forces, teaching the next generation. Declined, Jake replied. I'm not a teacher, I'm a weapon, and weapons don't belong in peacetime. Not just a weapon, Jake. You're a survivor, and survivors have something important to teach. He turned to look at her. What's that? To keep living when living is the hardest thing you can do. A woman approached them hesitantly. She was in her early 20s with Maya Santos' eyes and smile. She carried a single flower. Well, she asked quietly. I'm Sarah Santos, Maya's daughter. Breath caught. He hadn't known Maya had a child, but of course she did. That's why she volunteered. That's why she fought so hard to give her daughter a few. Conceived me just before volunteering for the program, Sarah explained. My grandmother raised me, but my mom left me letters explaining why she did it, why she chose to sleep for decades just for the chance to save people she would never meet. Mother was one of the bravest people I ever knew, Jake said honestly. She saved my life twice during the mission, saved a lot of lives. Knelt down beside his wheelchair. She wrote that if she didn't come back, she hoped someone would tell me how it ended. Will you tell me? Was she scared? Thought about lying, about telling this young woman what she wanted to hear, but he remembered Maya's last words. They deserved the truth. He said, we were all scared, terrified actually, but being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what needs to be done even when you're shaking with fear. Your mother knew it was a one-way mission. She knew she probably wouldn't come back, and she went anyway because that's who she was. His eyes filled with tears, she placed the flower in Jake's hands. Thank you for being there with her, for making sure she didn't die alone. Walked away to place more flowers at her mother's name on the memorial wall. Jake held the flower, his own tears finally falling. For Maya, for Ben, for all of them. Oral Station became a pilgrim site. People came from all over Earth to see the names, to pay their respects. But they also came from other worlds, alien species who had been freed by the Legion sacrifice. They brought gifts, stories on it. Legation from one of the former slave worlds approached them at her office one day. They were a small species, barely 4 feet tall, with fur-covered bodies and large eyes. Price, their leader said through a translating device. We are the people. They enslaved our world 80 years ago. They took our children, forced our people into labor camps, killed anyone who resisted. When your Crimson Legion broadcast the truth about them, we rose up, we fought back, and we won our freedom. We owe you everything. Oh, the Legion, Em corrected. And you owe yourselves. You were the ones brave enough to fight. Legion showed us it was possible, the leader replied. For 8 years, we thought they were invincible. Then we saw humans fighting with primitive weapons, refusing to surrender. We realized we had been prisoners of our own fear. The Legion freed us from that fear. Our delegations came from dozens of worlds. Each one told the same story. The Empire had controlled through terror. By showing that the Empire could bleed, the Legion had broken that control forever. They still existed, but they were a shadow of their former power. Most of their fleet had been destroyed fighting rebellions. Their conquered worlds were now free. The Galactic community offered Earth a seat on the Galactic Council, not as a junior member, as a protector species, a civilization that others could call on when facing threats they couldn't handle alone. Want us to be the galaxy's soldiers, Grant said during a meeting with Emma and other Earth leaders. He had come out of retirement to advise on this decision. They see what the Legion did and think we're all like that. We are, Emma replied, when pushed far enough, but we need to be clear about what we're willing to do. The Legion sacrificed themselves to save Earth. We can't ask that of every generation. Debate raged for weeks. Finally, Earth accepted the council seat with conditions. They would help defend other worlds, but they would do it as equals, not as hired warriors. They would protect, not conquer. They would stand with the oppressed, not rule over them. Programs began across Earth. Young people signed up in massive numbers, inspired by the Legion's example. They wanted to be like the soldiers who saved humanity. But the training was different now. It emphasized cooperation, diplomacy, and understanding. Force was a last resort, not the first response. Danny, the young private who had fought in Seoul, now trained new recruits. He told them about watching the Legion fall from the sky, sacrificing themselves to draw any fire away from civilians. He told them about the old man killed in the street. He told them that being a soldier meant choosing to protect, not to destroy. Legion won because they were willing to die, Danny said to his trainees. But the goal isn't to die for Earth, it's to live for it, to build something worth protecting. Anyone can throw their life away. It takes real strength to make your life. Remained at the memorial station, refusing offers of honors and positions. He spent his days talking to visitors, especially the young people. They asked him about the battle, about the Legion, about what it felt like to be a hero. Feels like carrying the weight of everyone who didn't come back, he always answered honestly. It feels like wondering why I survived when better people died. It feels like a responsibility I'll never be able to fully repay. Slowly over the months, Jake began to change, not forgetting, never forgetting, but learning to live with the memories instead of drowning in them. He started writing down the stories of his fellow Legion members, recording their lives, their hopes, their reasons for volunteering, making sure they would be remembered as people, not just names on a wall. Year after the battle, Jake stood at the memorial wall on the anniversary of the attack. Thousands of people gathered around him, Earth dignitaries, alien ambassadors, family members of the fallen, and young soldiers who had joined the defense forces inspired by the Legion. Little girl approached him. She was maybe 6 years old, holding her mother's hand. "Mr. Jake," she said in a small voice, "my teacher said you saved the world. Is that true?" Knelt down to her level despite the pain in his still healing legs. "I helped, but I couldn't have done it alone. I had 4,999 friends who helped me, and they were much braver than me." The girl asked with a child's simple curiosity. Because they knew they might not come home, and they went anyway. They chose to protect people like you, people they would never meet. That's real bravery. Girl thought about this. "I want to be brave like them when I grow up." Smiled, the first genuine smile he had managed in months. Then be brave by being kind, by helping others, by standing up for what's right even when it's hard. You don't need to fight aliens to be brave. The Legion fought so you could live in peace. Honor them by living well. Well, hugged him and ran back to her mother. Jake watched her go, feeling something shift inside him. Maybe this was how he could repay the Legion, not by dying with them, but by living for them, by making sure the world they died for was worth the sacrifice. Joined him at the memorial wall. They stood together, looking at the 5,000 names carved in metal in memory. "You think they would be proud?" Emma asked quietly, "of what we've become?" Thought about Maya, Ben, and all the others, about their hopes and dreams, about what they fought for. "I think they'd tell us we can do better, but yet I think they'd be proud. We're not perfect, but we're trying, and that's what matters." Then the ceremony began, music played, flowers were laid at the memorial. People from 100 worlds came together to remember the soldiers who freed the galaxy. But Jake knew the real memorial wasn't the station. It was Earth itself. A world that refused to bow, civilization that chose to protect rather than. Sunset on Earth below, casting golden light through the station's windows, Jake made a silent promise to his fallen comrades. He would live. He would remember. He would make sure their sacrifice meant something, not just for 1 year or 10 years, but for. Demanded Earth bow down. Humanity struck back with the Crimson Legion, and in doing so, humanity proved something important. Not that they were the strongest species, not that they were the most advanced, but that they would never stop fighting for what mattered, that they would stand up again and again no matter how many times they were knocked down. That they would extend a hand to help others stand as well. It was the true legacy of the Crimson Legion, not conquest, not domination, but the simple, powerful idea that courage means choosing to protect the vulnerable, to fight for the helpless, and to stand against tyranny no matter the cost. So would never forget the day 5,000 soldiers changed everything, and as long as humans remembered them, the Legion would never truly die. They would live on in every act of courage, every moment of sacrifice, every time someone chose to do what was right instead of what was easy. Looked at the names on the wall one more time. "Rest easy," he whispered. "We'll take it from here." Somewhere in the stars, he liked to think they heard him. The soldiers who gave their tomorrow for everyone's today, the warriors who proved that true strength isn't about refusing to fall. It's about standing back up no matter how many times you're knocked down. Crimson Legion was gone, but their spirit would live forever in the hearts of those who remembered, and that was the greatest victory of all. Knew he would never rest. Not really. He would carry the weight of those 4,999 deaths for whatever remained of his life. He would remember every face, every name, every soldier who fell so Earth could be free. It was his burden, and he would bear it alone. There may 30 humans remain from the 5,000 who launched, but 30 would be enough. It had to be. "Or Earth," Jake said quietly. "Earth," the Legion replied in unison. "Charge the final door. Prepare to do the impossible." "Crimson Legion," Jake said quietly. "Light them up." Pods smashed into the hulls, and the battle for Earth began. Stared at the pods in shock. "How many?" "1,000, said. 5,000 soldiers from across our history who agreed to be preserved, enhanced, and held in reserve for the day when Earth needed warriors who had nothing left to lose. They already lost their families, their worlds, their times. This is their chance to save ours." Pods began to hum with power. One by one they started to open. Steam hissed into the cold air, and from each pod a figure began to stir. I looked up at the surface, imagining the fleet hanging in the sky like executioners. They had demanded Earth bow down. They had shown their strength, their cruelty, their certainty of victory. "Wanted to see human strength?" Whispered. "Let me show you what humanity looks like when we have nothing left to lose." Crimson Legion was awake, and the Empire was about to learn that some species don't know how to surrender.